What's going on, everybody? Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the DraftKings Sportsbook Studios. Playoff edition. Welcome into divisional round week. Going to be very exciting stuff. And the Titans hitting the practice field a day earlier than normal because, of course, their game will be on Saturday as opposed to Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. So in doing so, we're going to talk about the process to kind of ramp Derrick Henry up to speed and what Titans head coach Mike Vrabel had to say about that today. Wrote an article about this, basically Mike's comments about whether Derrick would be available or not and how they would kind of get him ready to proceed. Got some numbers for you on that as well as to why it'll be interesting for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's not an ideal time for Cincinnati to potentially have to face Derrick Henry. So we'll talk about that throughout the course of tonight's show. Before we get to all of the great content, we're going to talk about Derrick Henry. We'll talk about the Bengals, and then we'll all laugh at J.J. Watt together, as is tradition. But at this point, I need you to share this show around, if you would be so kind. If you are hanging out with us on Twitter, please retweet the show. That's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you are on Facebook Live, you can share now to public. That is in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. YouTube and Twitch, go ahead and subscribe to the A to Z Sports channel. You can get our live stream content 7 days a week and multiple times a day. In fact, that is how you get involved. And now that more of you have done that and you've invited your friends to come hang out with us, we can start this show officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the DraftKings Sportsbook Studios. If you're new to the show, I'm your host, Buck Rising, and I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by the fine folks at Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, the best place that you could possibly go for your new or pre-owned vehicle needs. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. You got DraftKings Sportsbook with the promo code A2Z Sports. It's going to get you in on all the action. A great offer to tell you about later on using that promo code A2Z Sports. The Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage, the official real estate agency of the Tennessee Titans, the Nashville Predators, and Prime Time at GaryAshton.com. And of course, satisfaction guaranteed on all your HVAC needs comes from Brymak Mechanical, BRYMAK, Brymak.com. So, Derrick Henry should return this week. All indications are that the Titans will be able to activate him to the 53-man roster. They will do that Friday when the transactions have to be submitted by 3 p.m. Central Time prior to Saturday's game. So with all of that being said, well, outside of the obvious, which is that the Tennessee Titans are a better football team with Derrick Henry than without Derrick Henry, it comes at a pretty favorable time given a larger amount of circumstances, and we'll kind of walk through them tonight. But first and foremost, I want to get your Two Rivers Ford take before we can begin the content officially. The question that we want to start the show with for you is this. In your opinion, do you think Derrick Henry will determine whether the Titans win or lose to the Bengals? I think this is an interesting question. In your opinion, will Derrick Henry's presence on the field determine whether the Titans beat the Bengals or lose to the Bengals? Give me your answer, and give me your answer as to why that will be the case in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Will Derrick Henry determine whether the Titans win or lose to the Bengals this week? Respond in the comment section. We'll talk about it together. While you do that, I'll tell you about our friends at Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford is the best in the business, not just because they present the Two Rivers Ford take, but because they will make sure that their customer service is at the forefront. Not going to try and take advantage of you from a price gouging standpoint like so many other car dealerships are doing right now because inventory is harder to come by. Two Rivers Ford has one of the largest selections in the states of quality American-made Ford vehicles. They put the customer first and foremost because their sales staff, they're non-commissioned. My non-commissioned salesperson that I'm working with, Jonathan Whittlick, he helped me find my perfect vehicle, and I can't wait to get in my new 2022 Ford Explorer when it's delivered in March. 2-month turnaround, not even 2-month turnaround, month and a half turnaround. Very, very pleased with it. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. So the question that I'm asking you is this. Will Derrick Henry's presence determine whether the Titans beat the Bengals or not? Now, there's a couple things that you have to consider in this conversation that I think a lot of people need to just kind of take a step back before you respond. Because I think, gut reaction would be like, yeah, of course, Derrick Henry, the best player on the football team historically, is going to give the Tennessee Titans the best opportunity to win. But will he? Now, that's a different conversation, right? Will he be the determining factor versus will he help them or be the primary driving force to them getting the win? I think that's an interesting conversation. Now, when you look at this, you have to consider, okay, what have the Titans done in the rushing game without Derrick Henry? Well, they've been pretty successful thus far. I think that when you look at Deontay Foreman, when you look at Dontrell Hilliard, and the juice that they've been able to provide, and by the way, the fact that for 2 straight games to end the regular season and with an additional week of rest and rehabilitation, Titans offensive line's playing pretty good football right now in front of both those running backs and the quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, to allow him to have a performance like he did in Houston, even if he was under some pressure from that Texans front. So with all that being said, do you think that Derrick Henry alone will determine whether the Titans win or lose to the Bengals? And I think it's a curious question, but it comes against a pretty interesting opponent. And I'm going to tell you why right after we get excited for this game at Nissan Stadium on Saturday together.
This probably is not a popular thought at this point, but I still don't think anybody wants to see the Titans when you get into the postseason.
You know what? I'm not leaving.
Did anybody watch this defense and how they just ruined people up front with that front four?
I'm not leaving.
The adversity that this team has overcome, the fact that they continue to play tough-nosed football, they get after the quarterback, and again in the playoffs, they're going to be a tough team to play.
Hey, Craig, want to keep going?
I'm not leaving.
City to city, me tripping my gun, tripping the try something. Picture me in the kitchen, yeah, pitching. I need a side going digital, clearly. Still hit me up trying to buy something.
This is my home.
Cause see who doesn't hustle ain't entitled to a pie crumb. Might be the murder trial, to us that's called triumph. Living to the limit, I'm just saying, you only die once. Pouring out champagne for all the good that died young. I think this makes 3.
The show goes on.
Indeed, the show does go on. That is a hype video. Starlito, by the way. More normalize Starlito on hype videos for the end of time. Please, more local artists like Starlito. They got Key Glock out of Memphis to do a couple of the hype videos. It's perfect timing for this. It really gives it a little extra juice as far as I'm concerned. But when you watch that video, you see so many different players, so many different pieces, so many different parts that have allowed the Titans to kind of reach the heights that they've been able to do. And by the way, consider the fact that a lot of the missing pieces and parts have been players of significance, right? Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Bud Dupree. You're talking about time without players like Christian Fulton. Like, these are legitimate, bona fide, quality NFL players to above average NFL players, some of them great superstar players that the Titans have been able to win without. So from my standpoint, I'm kind of looking at this and saying, all right, so let's go through the numbers together and let's kind of see what the Titans have been able to do with and without Derrick Henry. We know what Derrick Henry is capable of, right? 8 weeks, he made it into the regular season, goes down after the Week 8 game against the Indianapolis Colts. He's got 10 touchdowns on the year. He finished 6th overall in the NFL in rushing after not playing since October. And we know without him, the Titans have done a pretty good job making sure that this running game stays on track. Because here's what Mike Vrabel told us today. We had a Zoom press conference with him. And he said about, regardless of who's the running back, whether it's Derrick Henry, whether it's Deontay Foreman, whether it's Dontrell Hilliard, whether it's one of the fullbacks, Kari Blossingame, or Torrey Carter, who just got designated to return from injured reserve earlier today, which is sneaky big. Vrabel said this: we are going to need to run the football. We are going to need to do that to be who we are and be at our best and not be one-dimensional, to be able to run it, to set up things and be able to run our offense. That has always been critical. So that may sound like a bunch of coach speak, but I mean, think about it. It's true. Without Derrick Henry, the Titans ran the football. With Derrick Henry, the Titans ran the football. You know that to close out their season, they had 3 straight victories to close out the regular season. And they did so running the football. They were second in the league. And I have a whole article about this, going kind of a little deeper into the numbers about how the Titans have kind of moved even more run heavy over the course of the last month, leading into the regular season finale and now the divisional round, where they had a free ride to the Elite Eight. Not a free ride, a ride that was earned by claiming the top spot in the AFC, but you understand what I'm saying. So from the standpoint of Derrick Henry, Titans had the second highest percentage of offensive plays that were rushes, right? So the second highest percentage of any NFL team. First was the Eagles, and second for the 2021 regular season, both with and without Derrick Henry, they ran the ball on 48.63% of their offensive plays. Now, when you come down to it and you look down the stretch, all right, they dropped that game against Pittsburgh. Hideous, we know. Did well on the ground, right? 200 yards rushing, and did run the football quite a bit in that game. In the last 3 games, though, after they lost to Pittsburgh, their last loss of the season, in the last 3 games, Todd Downing leaned even more into that. He ran the ball even more, and it was a big part of why they were able to secure their division, right? So when I say to you that will Derrick Henry be the determining factor between a win in the divisional round or not, I'll tell you that my answer is going to probably surprise you, or maybe some of you are aligned. We'll read some comments. Will Derrick Henry be the determining factor? 15 totes for the King, 20 for Foreman, and the play action will work. Get the King in a groove for the AFC Championship. That's Sheila on Facebook Live. For Dallas Elfman, he says, I love his running style, almost like you shot him out of a cannon every time he runs. I assume you're talking about Derrick Henry. Let's see. Yes, sir. Big Foreman, over 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, I believe. Hilliard, damn near 6.3 yards per carry. We have the best group of running backs. And by the way, they found those guys on the street, right? Nothing crazy. These weren't dudes who were on the roster prior, when the roster was initially constructed. These are guys that they just went out and got. So for all that being said, will Derrick Henry be the determining factor in the Titans winning this game? I'll give you my answer right after I tell you about our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Promo code A to Z Sports gets you in on all the action, as you see in the DraftKings Sportsbook app. And they have a fantastic offer for you who are going to get in on the action in this exciting time in the football calendar. Here's the thing about DraftKings Sportsbook, all right? If you're a new customer, you can get 56-1 odds as they count you down to Super Bowl 56. By the way, Titans 2 wins away from playing in Super Bowl 56. Can you imagine? So 56-1 odds on any team to win their game. You bet just $5, you win 280 in free bets if your team wins. You can also get in on the Hammer the Over promotion and different promotions like that they'll run all football season long. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code A2Z Sports. Get 56-1 odds on any NFL team. Bet just $5 and win 280 in free bets if your team wins. That's code A to Z Sports this weekend at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee to bet. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. So let's take a look at the numbers, right? you know that with or without Derrick Henry, Titans running the football. That's who they are. That's how they win football games. That's how they get the job done. And with all that said, you're looking at the Titans potentially and getting Derrick Henry back and saying, all right, if Derrick Henry plays, Titans for sure going to win, right? There's no doubt. It's January. It's the 22nd day of January in the year 2022, 22 years removed from the Titans' first trip to the Super Bowl, right? So all the karmic odds are aligning. The universe is coming together. It's Derrick Henry's time. Well, I mean, maybe, and it's entirely possible. He could come right back in. He could take over the game. He could be Derrick Henry as we're all accustomed to him being. But if he's not quite that, if there's even any discrepancy, because they'll use these 3 days to kind of evaluate how he ramps up. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the Titans will practice. They'll make a decision on him if they activate him or don't activate him on Friday. But it's happening at a perfect time because, here's the thing. It almost sounds ridiculous to say, but they don't necessarily need Derrick Henry right now. Listen to these numbers in the last 3 games. All 3 wins, 3 straight wins to end the regular season. They upped their rushing snaps on offense to an average of 52.75% in those 3 straight wins. Todd Downing's offense ran for 412 yards in 3 games, 412 yards on 96 attempts. That's a 4.29 yards per carry average, 3 touchdowns on the ground. They haven't necessarily been overwhelmingly efficient, whether with Derrick or without Derrick, but they found ways with the offensive line in front of him getting healthy, in front of them getting healthy. They found ways to up that efficiency over the course of the last couple of weeks. They are about 24th in the league, in fact, when it comes to rushing play success rate, according to the advanced analytics. By the way, it looks like the Rams just went up 20-0. Looks like a pick 6 of Kyler Murray based on what's happening right now as we're keeping track of this NFC wildcard game. To you, oh no, I'm sorry. He got no, he did get picked. He launched that ball up as he was getting ready to get sacked in the end zone. Interception, pick 6, 20-0 without the extra point right now for the Cardinals. Oh, such shitty wildcard weekend games. What a disaster for Arizona. Anyway, so with all that being said, Titans don't necessarily need Derrick Henry. Would he help? Of course. But will he be the deciding factor? No, not at this point. Another playoff implosion, says Silent Toxic 707. There have been a lot of bad playoff games this weekend. I mean, even the San Francisco-Dallas game, I know that was an exciting ending, but I mean, that was just not a good, it shouldn't have been competitive until Jimmy G threw that interception, right? Threw them back into that game. Terrible, terrible pick. Did look like he pulled a Carson Wentz right there. Zach Goodman says on Facebook Live. So let's keep it moving and let's a baby Yoda ain't great, says AC720. Listen, Kyler's a lot worse without DeAndre Hopkins. Now, with them trying to get healthy, that was the hope that they could get him back and available. But at this point, they're having a lot of mistakes, and the Rams just look really, really good. 21-0. Cliff Kingsbury looks shook up at this point. Not happy. All right, let's move on and let's talk about the Titans' opponent, the Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals coming to Nashville at this point. We talked to Mike Vrabel about that today. The question that I want to ask you as we move along through our conversation on A to Z Sports Primetime from the DraftKings Sportsbook Studios, the question that I have for you is this: what will be the best matchup battle between the Titans and the Bengals? Give me your answer on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We will discuss at length together. What will be the best matchup battle between the Titans and the Bengals? We'll talk about it here on A to Z Sports Prime Time from the DraftKings Sportsbook Studios right after I tell you about our friends at the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. The official real estate agent of the Tennessee Titans is GaryAshton.com. They know, the Titans do, that you want to win in the Nashville real estate market. You want to maximize your real estate investment. You want to make sure that you're doing that with the Intel Edge. Everybody, whether you're a football team, whether you're a football coach, whether you're Mike Vrabel, Ryan Tannehill, Cliff Kingsbury trying to dig his way out of this mess, everybody is looking for that little edge that can give them the biggest advantage. That's what you get when you get the intel from the Gary Ashton team. the best intel in Middle Tennessee. It will allow you to find your next home while you are currently maximizing your value on the one that you're still in if you're trying to take advantage of this seller's market. There's so many good reasons to work with the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage, the official real estate agent of the Titans, Preds, and me. I got my dream address with GaryAshton.com. So, what is the best matchup battle that you see between these two teams? Somebody asked me, by the way, if I think Cliff Kingsbury has a job tomorrow morning after they lose this one, and barring some spectacular comeback, which maybe the Cardinals are capable. I don't know. I really don't know at this point. It would be difficult for them to do. But I think that Cliff Kingsbury, you can't, I don't know. It's a tough question. I would think that they have to keep Cliff Kingsbury. They've been too good, even if it's largely on defense, and because DeAndre Hopkins is just a chuck it up, he's down there somewhere type of player. Kyler Murray has looked substantially worse without him as he tries to scramble and throws it out of bounds on 1st and 10. All right. So what matchup battle do you think is the most interesting? For Rodney Taylor on YouTube, it's the Titans secondary versus the Bengals wide receivers. And I think, Rodney, I think that's a good one, but I'm going to flesh that out a little bit more for you because I think it's almost more bigger picture than that. And we'll talk about, and you'll hear from Mike Vrabel on that here in just a second, by the way. So from your standpoint, what matchup battle are you most excited to watch? And this is an interesting conversation, right? Because, I know a lot of people, this is the best of the 4 potential teams that the Titans could have played. A lot of people weren't necessarily interested in that from a Titans fan standpoint. You want the game that's going to guarantee or most guarantee your team to be able to win. But from the standpoint of just watching great football, my God, is this Bengals-Titans game going to be fun. So when you look at the best matchup battle between these two teams, I want you to look a little larger picture. Now, something that affects this, and also, by the way, is going to make it interesting to see what they do with Derrick Henry, is the fact that Trey Hendrickson, who is the Bengals edge rusher, ruled out of that game with a concussion on Saturday against the Raiders, and Larry Ogunjobi, who was placed on IR today, their best interior defensive lineman, somebody who's been a really, really good player for them. So 2 of their best players, you got Trey Hendrickson, who was 3rd on the team in pressures, and Larry Ogunjobi, Trey Hendrickson 1st on the team in pressures, and Larry Ogunjobi, who was 3rd. Those 2 guys may potentially be missing. So I do think that creates beneficial matchups for Derrick Henry or whomever is running the football on Saturday against the Bengals. Tony N says, is someone saying that Murray hasn't played well without D-Hop? Wait, does a quarterback need his number one wide receiver skilled or number 1 skill position players to play well? Yes, Tony. I believe that was rhetorical, though. Trying to get Henry in rhythm would slow down the offense from Orobosa. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that name. Eddie Cardona likes the front 4 versus Burrow. And listen, I thought that Joe Burrow, he was under pressure. That offensive line isn't good. Familiar face in Quentin Spain. Their right tackle is one of the worst in professional football right now. I think it's Isaiah Prince is the name. I know the last name's Prince. I'm blanking on his first name, but he was getting a bit of business. Now, Zach Taylor, I thought, called a pretty good game throughout the course of that to keep the Bengals from, being put in disadvantageous positions by taking sacks or, the offensive line being poor and them holding, which is basically a sack because you lose 10 yards when that happens. Dom Odell likes the matchup of Cunningham versus Mixon, mixing it up. And I think that you would see David Long working with Cunningham, working on Mixon. I think you would see sometimes Zach Cunningham, who is just an absolute thumper in the middle of the Titans defense right now. But, to go back to an earlier commenter's question, I think it was Rodney Taylor on YouTube who said the Titans secondary versus the Bengals wide receivers. And I'd say branch out even wider, Rodney. I'd say the Titans secondary, safeties, and corners against the Bengals skill position players. Because when you talk about the wide receivers are great, but they have a really, really good tight end. And I think to watch Dane Cruikshank, who's been the tight end killer all year long, I think that's going to be a lot of fun in total.
And you touched on Burrow there, Mike. You faced him last year. What maybe impresses you most about him as a quarterback and the weapons around him?
Well, they're really explosive. I mean, we didn't have many answers for him last year. So hopefully, he just was able to extend plays and they made a lot of plays down the field, receiver wise. So, we'll have to be better in all phases. We turn the football over and, again, that was a long time ago, but obviously we're very aware of the type of football team that this is and how good they are.
So, Mike Vrabel understands the opportunity because it's CJ Uzoma, I believe is how you pronounce the tight end's name. You've got T. Higgins. You've got Jamar Chase. They've got a lot. You've got Joe Mixon. There's a lot of fun players in the mix for the Bengals, and certainly Joe Burrow has been spectacular. I mean, I was reading rather an article in Sporting News earlier today about this and the way that Joe Burrow has really attacked defenses all year long. He's been great for the most part. Now, he's had some games where he hasn't been necessarily efficient. And frankly, I didn't think Saturday they looked all that great when they got into the red zone. But I did think that the Raiders did well to, as Mike Vrabel put it. And in fact, I asked Mike Vrabel that question today, whether it was just, the Raiders, as he put it, keeping things in front of them in the red zone, really sound tackling, because Las Vegas allowed 81% of the time when you got in the red zone, Vegas allowed a touchdown to their opponent this season. But when you look at Joe Burrow and the historic 2-game stretch that he had to end the regular season, he finished with a 70.4% completion percentage. He had 4,611 yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 picks. He led the NFL in yards per attempt at 8.9. He had nearly 1,000 yards in his last 2 starts, and he's doing all of that without an offensive line. Now, he has to do it because their offensive line is poor, and the defense without potentially, well, we know for sure without Larry Ogunjobi, potentially without Trey Hendrickson, if he doesn't get cleared to return from that concussion that he sustained against the Raiders. This is going to be an interesting game for this Bengals defense to try and manage the Titans offense. And really, as we talked about last night, a version of the Titans offense that we just haven't seen. Only 120 snaps, as I told you yesterday, courtesy of Mike Keith from Titans Radio. Only 120 snaps have Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, and A.J. Brown played on the field together this entire season. So you're basically looking at a whole different team. All right, let's wrap things up by laughing at J.J. Watt more than the NFL is laughing at J.J. Watt and the Cardinals right now. 21-0. They trail 245 and counting in the second quarter. Just an embarrassing performance by the Cardinals tonight. But the question that I want to ask you is this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. It's a simple question. Scale of 1 to 10. I need a number. How corny is J.J. Watt? You got to let me know. On Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, we will discuss at length. All you got to do is give me a number. On a scale of 1 to 10, how corny is number 99 for the Arizona Cardinals? A long time, played a decade here in the AFC South. A fantastic player by all accounts. He is King Cornball, though. That, as you see there on your graphic, on a scale of 1 to 10, how corny, how unbearably corny is J.J. Watt? We'll talk about it together right after I ask you, or right after I tell you, rather, about our friends at Brymak Mechanical. BRYMAK, Brymak.com. That's where you go for satisfaction guaranteed on every one of your HVAC needs. Listen, it's a local business. I text with Chris Hamby all the time, Miss Sherry, his lovely wife. They own the business together. Commercial, residential, HVAC work. They got you covered. Named after their kids, Bryant McKenzie. They are the best in the business. They serve Tennessee and Kentucky with 3 locations. Their main hub out of Clarksville. Brymak Mechanical, BRYMAK, Brymak.com. Scale of 1 to 10, how corny is J.J. Watt? Because if you didn't know, J.J. Watt, I think it's Justin Joseph Watt, if memory serves. J.J. made his return to the Arizona Cardinals today. Now, J.J. had been playing good football at the time that he got hurt. In fact, one of the biggest reasons why the Cardinals were winning games in the early go of the season is because their defense was nasty. Absolutely. I would say from the standpoint of his return, I think it bode, I think I'm probably using incorrect grammatical context, but it looked like things would go well for the Cardinals tonight. Now, their offense has truly sputtered. They've really, really struggled again. But with all of the corniness of JJ, I think that you have to consider that he is as excited, or was as excited prior to the game, about his return as anyone. And so in Tom Brady-esque fashion, he put out a hype video to get people ready for his, and mostly his, but the Arizona Cardinals playoff debut.
California dreaming, no, I'm set to win a night. All the leaves are brown and the sky is gray. I've been far on a winter's day. I've been sleeping
All right, so that's J.J. Watt's hype video prior to kickoff today, and now they're down 21-0 with 2:09 to play in the second quarter. He is King Cornball without question, and for all of the good, J.J. Watt is a spectacular player. There is no disputing this. J.J. Watt is, by all accounts, a spectacular human as far as contributions, giving back, just a general member of society is concerned. But he is also incredibly corny. And we can love all of these great things about J.J. Watt, but also look at J.J. Watt and be like, come on, enough with this already. 21-0, the Cardinals are losing right now. And as soon as I saw that hype video, the first thing that went through my head is Los Angeles by 1,000. J.J. Watt cannot do this with the same kind of gravitas that Tom Brady does before each and every one of his big games. Tig says an 8. Wesley James Sandquist says a 2.2 out of 10 is the corniness of J.J. Watt. A shocker, an upset. I did not think we would get a number lower than 9 tonight, truly. Ben Hall says, oh, God, you're playing it. Yes, I did play it. And I feel that we're all dirtier for watching it. Dion Bonner says 8.5 because of the Zat Mettenberger thing a few years back in those HEB commercials when he was a Texan. I don't know what HEB is. But regardless, this is the status of J.J. Watt, suffering through the final game of his regular season, in all likelihood, assuming that the Rams don't blow this 21-0 lead that they currently have. All right, it's going to do it for us tonight on the Primetime Show. Thank you guys, as always, for hanging out. Took today off of radio, back on the radio tomorrow. Looking forward to it. We're going to have Mike Giardi of the NFL Network. We're going to have winners and losers of the football weekend. We're going to break down the numbers on the Bengals and the Titans in greater detail. Great week of guests coming for you. You're really going to enjoy it. We're going to have all of our friends in town who hang out with us on the radio show. They're coming in to cover this game with Diana Rossini and Cam Wolf of the NFL Network. Harry Douglas is going to be in. It's going to be great. So make sure you're listening from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. There's an app that you can listen to it. You can watch it live streamed on YouTube. They put all 3 hours of My Ugly Mug on the radio show on the Zone's YouTube page. Enjoy what remains of this ass-kicking tonight, and we will do it again on Primetime tomorrow, or if you join us on the radio show tomorrow morning